So here's another method. It's a tuning fork method. And most people that do this go with an A tuning fork. This is old school. This is how I learned to tune this. And we had a pitch pipe we blow into, like they would sing like a barbershop quartet, and then everybody gets in tune. And then you would tune one string to it. Actually, the pitch pipes usually had 6 tones, so you can get close. But the tuning fork is another tried and true method. And so you just activate it, usually on your knee, and then you hold it to your bridge, and you'll hear what it sounds like. And then you tune. Again, this is A. This is A440. You can buy A 432 hertz as well, but this one's A440. And hit it a little bit harder. You hear that? You can hear that's pretty well in tune. It'll knock it out of tune again, and we'll hear how it sounds. Pretty good. Slight beads there, but I'm going to let that slide for now. My purpose right now is for me to get perfectly in tune. I'm showing you a few different methods that people use. A440 tuning fork. So the idea is you get your A string perfectly in tune. That's an easier one to hear pitch-wise than say the lower E. It might seem more logical. I start at the E string, so I want the pitch for a low E. You can get it, but it's just a little bit easier for the human ear to hear this pitch a little bit higher than that low E. That tone is easier to hear and be more accurate with. So that's the tuning fork method. Once you got your A in tune, you would go back to the 5th fret method. You can. I haven't gone to the harmonic method yet, which I'll do in the next chapter. But for what we know right now, you would use the A tuning fork as a reference, get the A string perfectly in tune, and then come back and then just do the 5th fret method from there. Now, but instead you wouldn't be tuning the A, because A is perfectly in tune. That's your reference note. So now you're going to go back and tune your E. So if your E's out of tune, kind of hard to reach. See how you're just coming up to the pitch? You're training your ear to hear that relationship. Does that sound sharp or flat to you? So that's a trick question. I'd say it's sharp. So every time if I'm sharp, I'm going to come back down underneath the tone and then back up to it just a little bit. So that's the tuning fork method. You would just keep on going and work your way all the way across using the 5th fret method. Okay, for a deeper level of tuning, we're going to use what's called the harmonic method. If you're a beginner, maybe you've never played harmonics, so this will be a little bit different for you. The easiest harmonics to activate on the guitar are at the 12th fret. You activate a harmonic by just lightly touching the string. You're not pushing down, you're not fretting it, you're just touching it at the fret, at the metal. You're not in the middle of the fret anywhere. You have to be directly over it. That is, at the 12th fret, is exactly halfway between the endpoints, the nut and the bridge. Sometimes it's an optical illusion. It doesn't look like it's halfway because this looks shorter in a way, but if you measure it, it's exactly halfway. And if you put your finger lightly here, you'll produce a sound that's called a harmonic. That's just a regular string ringing. And when you touch it, it gives you the harmonic. And so that's the basis of how we're going to approach this tuning. The first time I ever learned harmonics, I remember a person showed it to me and I struggled with it, but finally I was very excited when I got that sound to happen. It's very cool. Harmonics are a very fun area to investigate. But right now we're going to use it for tuning. The harmonic method, you've got the A in tune. Typically, again, that's where I kind of start. To use a harmonic tuning method, you really just need to find a harmonic on one string that's equal to a harmonic on another string. They don't have to be adjacent. They can be separated by several strings, and that's the case that we'll be using here too. But the most common thing is play the harmonic on the 5th string, 7th fret, which matches the 6th string 5th fret. So you just put your fingers just lightly over top of them, right again, right over top of the fret wire, not in the fret, but right over top of the fret wire, and you play them both. Then again, you can hear the notes between them. I'll knock it out of tune a little bit. And this one really gets your ear tuned up, get you used to hearing those beads and knowing when you're in tune and when you're not. Hear that? You can hear that it's out of tune. And as we get closer, the beads start going wah wah, and they slow down. And again, it's a thing that you might not ever get it dead perfect, but you'll be real close. It's not a thing to get hung up about. If you're too much of a perfectionist, you may never actually get to play. Like I'm there, I can't get in tune, so I don't get to play. But so that's the first pair. For the next pair, you move it over a string so that you're playing the 7th fret on the D string, the 4th string, and the 5th fret on the A string. That didn't work. So again, we know that the A string is in tune, and we're hearing that variation there, the beads. So that means, because we just tuned these two, and they're ringing pretty nicely together. In this case, which string's out of tune? It's the D string, so that's the one we have to operate on. Now it's going, you hear the beats go too fast, which means I went past, now I'm sharp. And another thing about this method, I mentioned earlier that with the 5th fret method, you have to hit a note and then reach up around, and that's awkward. With the harmonic method, your fingers are more free. That's still ringing, and then I can tune up, and it just makes the thing more ergonomic. So I came down underneath it, and then back up. Pretty close. So now we move over, we can still use this 7th fret on the string underneath and the 5th fret on the string that's just above it. Again, so that's a little bit out. And you know what's interesting, right? We just tuned up with the tuner and it was pretty well perfect. And then we went with the 5th fret method and it was really pretty well good. This is a more accurate method of tuning, so it's a little bit deeper level. It sounded a little bit sharp to me. I went underneath. Now I'm going to come back up to the pitch. A little bit too far. It's pretty good, right? And so another thing that you do when you're using this method to tune, so you just got those in tune, and another reference for you is the octave. Now if I play the 7th fret on the string, on the 5th string, it's E. It's an E octave of the note directly in front of it. So those two notes should be pretty much the same. Same thing here. If I go to the D string and play the 7th fret, it's going to be equal to the A note beneath it. It's an octave higher, but it's just one octave, so it's pretty easy to hear. And we got these guys in tune. So you see, there's all kinds of ways to tune, and we haven't exhausted all of them yet. So we can go pretty deep with this. Now, so we've got the first 4 strings in tune. Now we come up to the B string. If you remember, the relationship is different between that's the perfect 4th, but this is a major 3rd. And you can already hear, I bet you can hear that's not in tune exactly right. It's a little bit sour sounding. It's not as sweet as it should be. So how do we tune the B? Because we can't, this isn't going to work. Even if they were perfectly in tune, that's not a method for us to do there. So one way to tune the B string with harmonics is to play the 7th fret on the A string and you can fret the E note on the B string.
A little bit sharp, right? Or not? No, not really. Maybe a little bit flat. And when you're playing the harmonic and a fretted note, you can feel how the string is vibrating, and you'll get used to that. It's very subtle, but you can feel it. You can feel it when it drops into tune. Pretty good. So from there, we got one more string, and this is one way to tune these top two strings. There's another harmonic way that we'll cover too. But what this kind of keeps things in order is you're always dealing with the 5th and the 7th fret. So it's a little bit easier to memorize as a tuning method. So that set of strings, that set of strings. And so now when we go to the B string, we're still on the 5th and 7th fret, but we're reversing a little bit, and we're fretting a note. We're going to fret the high E, or the E string on the E note on the B string, and hit the harmonic of the E on the 5th string, 7th fret. So we just did that one. And to get the E string, we do the exact same thing, just move it over one string each. So now we're going to hit the 7th fret harmonic on the D string, the 4th string, and fret the 5th fret on the E string. So that's pretty well way out. Now you can hear that it's sharp, right? We've got to go down and come back up to it. Pretty good. And not exactly perfect, but you're never going to be perfect. So let's just get over that idea. Okay, so now we're in tune. We've gone over the tuning method using a tuner to tune each string. We've gone over the 5th fret method, 5th fret, 4th fret, 5th fret. And we've gone over the harmonic method, which is usually the 7th fret of, say, the A string and the 5th fret of the E string. You're always in that relationship going across. Now when we get to the B string, we go to the 7th fret harmonic on the A string and fret the 5th fret. And now for the E string, we just move that over one. But you could be saying, but I want all harmonics. I don't want to fret a note. I want all the strings to be open when I'm tuning them. So that's valid. So what do we do there? Instead of playing the note that's the E, now we can just find a B harmonic that's roughly equivalent, or maybe even the same, of the open string B. So it so happens that's on the 7th fret of the E string, which is a B harmonic. So, how convenient. I'll knock it out again. Pretty good. So now again, what that affords us is that ability to have our hand free for tuning instead of having to reach around to do that thing there. There's nothing wrong with that. Some of my favorite pictures of Hendrix were doing that. Actually, he usually had the guitar up to his ear, because if you put the guitar by, especially like an electric guitar, you're on stage and you don't want the amps on and all that kind of stuff, you can really hear the strings. You put your ear right up to it. If you're on a phone or something like that and you put the phone, let it vibrate with the body, you can really hear it. That's a fine method to do the reach, but also, again, maybe you don't want to do this. So there you go. You've got the 5th fret harmonic on the E string and the open B string, and they're the same note. So it's not even an octave, it's unison. So where would you guess the next note is? So now we need to find a harmonic for the open E string. As luck would have it, it's just one string over, same fret. So we go to the 5th string, 7th fret, and there it is. Which is pretty neat. Knock it out again. Ooh. And just experiment with this and learn it. You can find notes other places that you might want to tune up to. You can tell me in the comments, no, I like to do it like this. I found this really nice relationship between these strings. So that's just another method that Harmonics. Or just depends. And you can hear there's subtle differences in the fretted note because you're changing the length of the string. So if you're comparing an open note to a fretted note, you're automatically going to have some kind of inconsistencies there. The guitar, even pianos are purposefully a little out of tune because if it's perfectly in tune, it sounds out of tune. That's a freakish thing. There's all kinds of math involved with this. And again, the human ear, which is a very amazing organ. There's a lot involved with it. But don't expect to tune perfectly. If it's perfect, it's antiseptic and it doesn't sound right, even though it's perfect. But we'll move on. We'll move on to the next method. And again, all the way through all of these, you can be checking multiple ways. You can like tune that, you can do there. You can look at the tuner for reference if you want, and you can use the octave methods, and you can just play chords. So we're going to move on to the final check. Okay, the next thing to listen for with tuning is a relationship from string to string. And I mentioned earlier that we start off, we need to learn the names of the open strings, E, A, D, G, B, and E. And so E to A is a perfect fourth, A to D is a perfect fourth, D to G is a perfect fourth, G to B is a major third, and B to E is a perfect fourth. You can hear those relationships between the strings. It's harder to hear it in the lower notes. As I mentioned, the Here Comes the Bride interval is what you can listen for. You probably can recognize that. You can get that's close. And I don't really know a good interval or a reference for the major third, but you can hear that one really well. If you see old bluegrass players and banjo players, that's how they tune up. My relatives when I was growing up were all bluegrass players. I never really learned bluegrass. I didn't have proper respect for it at the time. I was like, that's not Hendrix. You guys suck. They actually were really good bluegrass players. I wish I could go back and learn from them, back to my 12-year-old self, and I have a little bit of respect. But they tuned up with the sound of the strings like that. And they would be pretty spot on. And now you're back to that one. So as far as the relationship to strings, you might recognize that tone a little bit easier than when we're down low like this. That's the open E and then the A string played on the second fret, which is a B. So that becomes a perfect fifth. And as the power chord, that's called an E5. So if you play that and again, once again, your ear will tell you if you're in tune or not. And if you're not, then you just keep adjusting the tuners until you get to what sounds in tune to you. And that's G and D, which again is a perfect fifth. That's not a perfect fifth because of the B string is a little bit different. That's a B and an F sharp, which is a perfect fifth. Recognize that? I've never played it like that before. But anyway, so that's just another way to lock in your tuning skills. So I've lost track. But when you're playing, you'll just get used to, you'll find the methods that really work well for you, and you'll just cross-reference things. And tuning can sound different here than it sounds here. Your intonation could be way different, and you might have to tune to accommodate for that, depending on how much playing you do and which registers.